Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast with Michael Becker and Paul Peebles. During this program, you will hear interviews with real-life successful investors who will share their stories and provide useful advice on how to acquire, finance, and operate apartment complexes. Now, here they are, Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital. And joining me is the professor himself, Mr. James Eng. James, how are you?
I'm doing good, Paul. Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to talk and spend some time and really congratulate you on the Old Capital Conference that just happened last week. Wow, what an unbelievable event. And if you weren't there, you missed out. So I wanted to spend some time with James and just kind of go over a high level of what we talked about. I mean, first of all, the congratulations. I think we almost had 350, 400 people, apartment investors that came. People were saying that it was probably the largest conference that they had been to, and not just this year, but in the last 2 or 3 years in the B and C apartment space. So we had lots of investors that showed up, limited partners, general partners, people that were looking for any sort of partnership to really expand in multifamily. So again, congratulations to James and his lovely bride, Christine, about putting on just a fantastic event. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that go out and hire third parties to put on these events, but not Old Capital, especially not James Eng. Another great job. So James, congratulations.
Well, thank you, Paul. I mean, obviously it's a team effort to try to put this big of a conference on, and we literally start the day after the last one. So I think we've got a good, this was our 9th conference, 9th location, 9th keynote, 9th, everything was different. So it's always exciting yet challenging to put it together. But there's a lot of people in the audience who have literally been to all 9. We greatly appreciate those people and that come out every year. And I mean, what's funny is for people who are involved in multifamily, especially in Dallas, when they come out, there's just an energy that you get starting sort of Wednesday night. So Wednesday night, we had a happy hour over up in sort of West Plano. And there's probably 150 to 200 people at the happy hour. And if you've ever been to like a conference, sort of pre-conference happy hour, it's usually about 25 people and people leave after 30 minutes. But we kicked off at 5:30 and then I think we left at 9:30. So it was like a 4-hour happy hour of people coming and going.
Yeah, the restaurant kicked us out, by the way. So
yeah, the restaurant was supposed to close at 9, and then we just asked for 30 more minutes, and eventually people left. But it was, just what we found is that happy hour is really a chance for you to catch up with everybody, network, and then also, I learned this from you, really just connecting people and asking them sort of, okay, what are you trying to get? Who do you want to meet here? And sort of connecting the dots between, okay, you're a general partner. Let me introduce you to some limited partners. Or, you want to listen, maybe you want to talk to more limited partners. Well, here's some limited partners over here, or here's some brokers over here. Oh, you just bought your first deal? Here's some other deals that you should be taking a look at. And then, oh, by the way, the seller's right there. Right? I think that's where it clicks for people, is that this whole business, a lot of times people think that, well, I've got to have the highest price. I've got to have the most hard money. That's how I'm going to win this deal. A lot of times the deal happens right there at happy hour or at the conference in terms of you have a personal relationship with that person.
Michael says it's an unfair business sometimes. In developing a relationship with people is unfair because there's some people that have great relationships and there's some people that have no relationship. And you think the only way that you can win these deals is by offering the highest price. And that's not always the case. We're lenders, we're the bank, so to speak, in the transaction, and we're bringing these people together to meet limited partners to meet general partners to meet limited partners. You want to talk to an insurance company that putting people together with insurance premiums, seeing that lower, or do you want to talk with somebody that The highest cost in these transactions right now is insurance and property taxes. Here's a group right here that does a lot of property tax negotiations with the county. Talk with them, get to know them, spend some time over an old fashioned or a Mai Tai or whatever. But, spend some time and we introduced people back and forth. But I kind of lost track. I mean, everybody says, ours is one of the best conferences, and I'll be a little modest and say, yeah, I think it's the best. There's no doubt about it. People come from all over, not just North Texas, but all across the United States. James, name 5 different states that people came from that you met.
Yeah, just talking. I mean, New York, Chicago, the big ones, California, some people from Washington. So it was both coasts, even people from the Midwest, some Southeast, a couple people from Florida. So it was all over, but they all really wanted. Majority of the people are investing here in Texas. Some of these larger conferences, you go there and it's hard to, people are sort of talking about different things, but here everyone's talking about the same thing. And that is multifamily, and then more specifically, multifamily in Texas, and then even more specifically, DFW. Having that connection across the board was beneficial for everybody in the room because you could really set up your whole team over those 2 days.
So Wednesday is when we bring everybody together and get them all liquored up, so to speak. And so the tongue becomes more pliable and people become best friends quicker. And that's all because there's a big master plan about getting people together quickly, get them to know each other. Nothing devious about it, but we like when people are having a good time and talking a little bit more about what they're trying to do themselves. And so again, that goes on till 8:30, 9 o'clock, and that's what it did this year. Again, just like James had said, before we go into the day 2, name me all these different places that we've had the Old Capitol Conference. Just give me 5, James. 5 different places that we've done the conference at, because why do we keep changing it up? Why don't we just go with a non-window ballroom that looks like every other freaking ballroom?
I've got to be excited about the venue. I've got to be excited about planning it. And then it really goes into our theme for the conference. And we sort of try to wrap it all together and sort of tell a story. And some of the previous ones we've had it at the AT&T Stadium. So we had it at the football stadium. We've had it at the baseball stadium. We've had it at House of Blues. Let
me just jump in. It's not like a room at AT&T Stadium. It was up on the second level in the stands where we created a deck that we had Roger Staubach throw out footballs. It was on the field at Rangers Ballpark in Arlington, Texas, where we were on the field. We had Pudge Rodriguez speak at that. He was one of our keynote speakers in that. But we played baseball on the field at Ranger Stadium. So we always try to find a great venue that makes it memorable. So not like every conference that you've been to that's been in a ballroom looks like every other freaking conference that you go to. James tries to make it a little bit different. And so just like he says, he starts the day after the conference looking for the next unique venue. And I hate to ask you, James, but have you found a venue yet? You're
gonna have to wait for the announcement.
Oh, okay.
You're gonna have to wait for the announcement. But yeah, whether it's at football or baseball, or we've had it at the Flight Museum here in Dallas or House of Blues, every year we try to tie in the venue with the theme, and sort of that goes through the entire day of the presentation. And I think that's why it helps the feel of the conference. And it's almost like an experience or event that people have come to where they remember meeting the other people, but also listening to the panels, watching the videos, watching the interviews. It becomes all connected.
So talk a little bit about day number 2. What time does it start? And then talk a little bit about the theme for the 9th annual conference. What did we kick off with?
Yeah, so it starts off at 9 a.m. and it's just you and I up there on stage, really giving a state of the market of what we've seen over the last 9 to 12 months. And then, I went through some slides just around what we've seen, whether it's been maybe some of the tougher times that we've been through. Some people are getting hit with whether it's higher expenses or higher supply. on the BNC stuff. And then some people are, they're coming to the end of their time, really. I think one of my quotes was out of time, and a lot of these guys were getting foreclosed upon. And then we led up to what the theme for the conference was for the fourth quarter. And that, Paul, was
Believe. So we had the conference at the FC Dallas Stadium, the Toyota Stadium, where the Dallas soccer team plays. And so this is a huge stadium, and we were right off the stadium looking down onto the pitch, the field, whatever you want to call it. And because we were kind of celebrating this year going into next year, World Cup soccer. So World Cup soccer is coming to Dallas, coming to the United States, obviously. I saw general admission tickets. They were saying about $1,800 to go to some of these World Cup matches, just unbelievable prices. And so the stadium, Dallas Stadium, is going to be used as a practice facility for a European team that's going to come in to play again at the major stadium, which would be AT&T. We wanted to keep the theme of World Cup. And one of my favorite shows I watched for the last couple of years has been Ted Lasso. And Ted Lasso, if you remember seeing it or if you've never seen it, is a guy from the Midwest of the United States. He's been a football coach for a number of years, and he loses his job, and somebody from the UK hires him to come over to the UK and be the head coach of a soccer team. Well, he knows nothing about soccer, but the team's owner was trying to make sure that they were losing so they could eventually sell the team. And so they put this American guy who's only familiar with football into a stadium with rabid soccer fans, and he knows nothing about soccer. So it's not that he didn't know anything about it, but it all comes with attitude. And the attitude that he was able to convince his players was believe that you're going to be a great player out there, believe you're going to be better than the competition. And what was funny is with that positive attitude, he was able to convince a bunch of people that played soccer that he had the winning formula to be a winner. And so it's a great series, Ted Lasso. We kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how difficult it has been to be in the apartment investing business, whether you're an apartment investor, whether you're a general partner, if you've been a limited partner, you've had capital calls, you've had challenges, but we just know that this is a cycle business, and the cycle is starting to come back. It's been very difficult for the last 2 or 3 years, but now we're starting to see a little bit more momentum with lowering of interest rates, banks getting a little bit more aggressive to do what they have to do to finance it. And now we're starting to see some of the limited partners come back with additional money. And so that's why I was pleasantly surprised. We saw so many limited partners and general partners out in the audience that they are starting to believe. James?
Yeah, so we kicked off the conference with the believe attitude, and then sort of transitioned to the state of the market. And Greg Willett, who's with LeaseLock and has been sort of in the industry for a long time, sort of went through his slides, and I would say they were neutral to slightly positive slides. And, I think what was surprising, for a lot of operators this summer was that everyone expected the rents to turn positive maybe this summer, but they sort of stayed flat. And then so there's a little bit of concern on the rents right now. So we're having to wait maybe until next year to start seeing those lease trade outs. They're seeing rent pops on the renewals, but not necessarily on the new leases. Everyone's sort of fighting for occupancy right now. And I think you're having to take a little bit of a longer term outlook on buying these properties right now, because I don't know if we're going to see just that huge rental increase right from the beginning when you take over the property. After the state of the market, though, we did bring up the listing brokers, and I think the attitude changed pretty quick.
Sure.
So we had Mark Allen, Jacob Anderson, with Rowan, Birch, John Krebs, and Chabuzer up there, and had them really talk about what they're seeing out there in terms of deals that are on the market. A lot of it is A stuff that is still selling right now, but the BNC stuff is starting to go slowly, but those cap rates are expanding on the BNC stuff. Do you remember anything specific on the listing broker panel, Paul, that jumped out at you?
Well, there was a lot of things that jumped out at me, but what was interesting was quality of listing brokers that we have up there that a lot of people want to get to know. Again, these are the people that have their fingers in all the pies out there, so they understand what's going on in the market. They're able to have conversations. Back 3-4 years ago, you couldn't get these guys on the phone. You tried to bring them out to lunch, they didn't want to do lunch with you. You were just a number. Today, they'll take your call. And we had a great time. Michael Becker was the kind of the ringleader that held the floor, and he gave some great data and great information that they're very active and busy over at SPI, and number of transactions that Mark Allen is in the middle of. It was very interesting. Same with Jacob Anderson and the rest of the guys. They're starting to see the market come back.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of it, I just asked Mike for his sort of what changed sort of year over year for him, the 24 conference versus this conference. And I think for him, it was really around once the supply started coming down, he was thinking that rent growth is going to pop, but he said it might be a little bit longer. So you might have to hold these deals just a little bit longer than you thought, but he was comfortable buying through the cycle. And, I think he felt he's going to be in a good position coming out of this.
He also said that as he looked out to all the faces in the audience, that he didn't recognize a lot of the people, that a lot of people in the room were all new. And he thought that was a good sign of perhaps you should be, if you're new, you should be in our next, whether it is our bus tour or one of our additional conferences that we do in the future. So you just have to get in the room, get uncomfortable, meet people, get in the room and start having some conversations if this is what you want to do. Again, we're not educating, we're not mentoring, we're just talking. If you are an adult, we're not trying to take you as a kindergartner and trying to make you smarter. That's what we are doing, but that's not what we do. We're bankers, we're lenders. We don't want to see anybody lose any money, so we're out there trying to get you as much information as possible of what we're seeing in the market right now. Keep going, James.
And then your panel was up next, the lender panel. So we had recourse bank lenders. I like how we did have an extra chair up there that was not filled. And who was that extra chair?
So we had Fannie Mae, a representative from a lender that does business with Fannie Mae, lender's representative for Freddie Mac. We had a balance sheet lender, like a regional bank, community bank. We had a friend of ours who's an attorney that does a lot of workouts because there's been some distress in the market for some of the lenders and some of the borrowers. But the person that we did not give an invitation to, but we kept an open chair, was the bridge lender. And that bridge lender was very popular about 4 years ago. Not so popular today. And so we were kind of breaking their chops of how a lot of these bridge loans have put people in a lot of bad positions, but we weren't going to invite the bridge lender to the table. We used to have 25 or 30 bridge lenders out there that wanted to do business with you. And now we'd be lucky to find 3 or 4 or 5 bridge lenders. Then these are non-recourse bridge lenders. We have a lot of connections out there. We have a lot of relationships, but we were not going to highlight the bridge lenders just because I think they're one of the reasons why we've had some major problems.
Yeah, and we also had an attorney up there. Shamir was up there just really giving his insight into how to work out some of these deals, whether it's with bridge lenders or floating rate loans. I mean, I think there's a lot of nuances that this might be their first bridge loan, and now you're into the first extension, second extension. There's a lot of different scenarios that you can role play here. So make sure you work with a good attorney while you're negotiating your extensions out, I think was the biggest takeaway on that piece.
Sure. And then what happened?
Yeah, then we had lunch. We gave people maybe an hour 15 minutes to grab lunch and just network with people. And then we moved into the next panel, which I had 2 limited partners up there with me, David Banks and Jeremy Roll. And we played a game I called it Deal or No Deal. It was similar to Shark Tank though. So it was a combination of Deal or No Deal and Shark Tank. And I gave each of the LPs $1 million in Monopoly money and said, I'm going to have 3 general partners come up and present deals that I got some volunteers. And so we did a Houston deal, a Dallas deal, and a San Antonio deal. All of them, A, B, or C, different renovation plans, different capital structures, and then had the general partner come up to the stage, and they had about 5 minutes to present the offering. And then the LPs had 5 minutes of questions. Instead of me asking these LPs, hey, what's your investment box? What do you like? What do you don't like? This was almost like a very short webinar for the GP where they could present their deal and then it was sort of a quick fire round of questions from the LPs. And you could see the GP's minds thinking very quickly to make sure they could respond to all these questions. And then at the end of it, the LPs were able to allocate that $1 million to the different deals. And then we brought someone up from the audience who had a $500,000 check. And that person could pick one deal, and that would determine ultimately the winner of who got the most money. So I thought
it went fantastic, James. It's kind of a new segment for the ninth annual Old Capital Conference, and I thought it came off unbelievably well. I mean, I can't tell you how many compliments and comments that we had for people in the audience that actually could follow this. It was real life examples where you had the two limited partners quizzing, not being raw to the general partners, but being factual about how do you see this? How do you see that? And having the general partners be able to think on their feet on how to express what the ideal was and how to be successful on this transaction. So they were out there trying to capture that money and having the monopoly money, the real fake monopoly money, give people an idea of really that this was almost like an actual event and how to sharpen your skills. Great job. And, I'd love to do that next year too.
Yeah. So yeah, we went from the LP panel, then we transitioned to the AI panel and then the GP panel. And the AI panel, we really brought in people who have bought properties, I would say under 100 units over the last couple years. And I think AI is going to be more prevalent in that space in terms of maybe you can't have a full-time maintenance and a full-time manager there. How can AI help you in that regard? And, we had a couple people ask, I almost want like an AI panel every year. And maybe it's short, but like the top 5 or 10 things people are using AI for right now, because that segment is changing so quickly that it's difficult to keep up with unless you're in it day to day.
Well, I mean, look at some of the things that Perry Zhang is doing with his company of underwriting these deals. Instead of it used to be back of the napkin or just looking through an Excel report real quick, Perry has a system that you take this raw data and you can manipulate it using AI. And I thought he was somebody that was talking a little bit on the sidelines. He was a vendor at the Old Capital Conference. There was a lot of people around his table. I thought he did a wonderful job in explaining what the next generation is of apartment investors.
So he had a meetup on Wednesday for people who use sort of that portal. And so I thought it was good really to, if you are going to come in town before or after the conference, probably before, to try to go to some of these events that whether it's companies or individuals set up, just so that you can meet some people in smaller settings, because it is hard. I mean, there was 300 or 400 people at the event on Thursday. And so you just don't have time to talk to everybody in one day. So if you can attend some of these other ones, it is good. And then so after the AI panel, we went into the GP panel and had guys who had really bought a lot of properties this year or sold properties. So it was good to hear from guys who have been doing this for a while. Most of these guys, I think they were selling like 150 and up in terms of size. Do you remember anything from that GP panel?
It was guys that have been doing this for a long period of time, and they opened the kimono, so to speak, and they were sharing some great nuggets, golden nuggets of wisdom and information that everybody could use. I mean, it was not that, I'm great, you're not. They were sharing some great information, whether it was Vivek, who started off coming from India with $1,500 in his pocket and moved over to apartment investing a number of years ago. And he just closed on a 300 unit building. And this is like his fifth one. So just they talked about American success stories. I mean, I love that. Darwin German was there, been doing this since 1989. He shared all kinds of wisdom that was usable. So, and then all these guys are open that if you had any questions, either at the panel level or if you wanted to talk with them afterwards, this is the reason why we bring these people up, because they'd love to share the information. They're not trying to sell you. They're trying to help you and be part of it. So I thought it was great.
Some general partners, these guys have been around for a while. And I think if you're in this business 30 years, there's going to be some down years, right? And not every deal is going to be a home run. I don't know if we talked about this on the panel, but if it's almost like these guys are having to work through issues and just sort of get these deals to the other side to some extent. Like not every deal is going to go perfect, but I think the guys who are transparent, the guys who sort of talk the LPs through these deals are the ones that are still around, and they're the one that showed up at the conference, right? Some of these guys who just maybe they started in 21 and 22 and now they did one deal, but that deal didn't go well. They weren't there, unfortunately.
Well, let's wrap it up because I want to talk a little bit about our keynote speaker. Again, we choose keynote speakers not because they're in the industry. We do it because they're not in the industry. And we've had unbelievable keynote speakers. Guy that was in space was a Navy SEAL, and he was in space for almost a year up at the International Space Station. We have a guy who shot and killed Osama bin Laden. We have had a couple Hall of Famers. We've had all kinds of great people that you want to meet. And then afterwards, the keynote speaker gives their address, and they're actually singing around, shaking your hand, taking a picture with you too. So who was the keynote speaker this year, James?
So this year we had the current Mavs coach, Jason Kidd, who played basketball, I think, for 19 years. So he's been in the NBA for a while. And somebody with that type of longevity takes a different mindset. And even when he was a player, so his playing career was number two draft pick overall. He was 10-time All-Star. He won the championship with the Mavs. He has pretty much done everything. He's on the top 3 or 4 in assists and 3-pointers and in every category. But really, why I wanted to talk to him a little bit more during this keynote was really around, he was sort of like the leader on the court. And a lot of times on these transactions, if you're in a general partnership group, there might be 3 or 4 of you, but somebody's got to take the lead and direct the traffic to some extent. And he was one of the best at directing the traffic, but then also setting up the other players on the court to be in the best position to score. His job was really to get the ball to Dirk, but then when Dirk was double teamed, he needed to shoot a 3 and win the game, right? We talked about what he has done in the NBA, but then also now as the coach of the Mavs and also overcoming some adversity. So we couldn't really talk about this on stage, but last year was probably the biggest swing in emotion from getting one of his star players traded last year, and then now picking up probably the biggest rookie in a while coming out of the draft, getting a number 1 draft pick. The swing of emotion that he's had in the last 6 months has been huge. Just getting him to share that story and then really just talk through. During our Q&A, I showed him one pass around. One of his greatest assists was over Yao Ming, which was, he was 7'5" or something. And Jason is like 6'4". So getting that pass to win that game. And he remembers it like yesterday, that pass.
Well, you did a great job because you had a whole slideshow of pictures of his entire career. So when you were talking and he was looking up at the slideshow behind him, it just triggered all kinds of emotion. It was like he was there. Yeah. He remembers what it was like 10 years ago or 15 years ago when he was playing against everybody. I thought you did a great job by emotionally bringing him back to that game in that situation. So great job on that.
Yeah, and I mean, what was funny, he told one story around, he just invested in a soccer team, sort of as a limited partner called Everton. And he got that deal because, or he was a part of that deal because he was playing golf with essentially the general partner. And he sort of tied that back to, you never know where your next deal is going to come from. It wasn't on the basketball court. It was on the golf course that he got that deal. So you just never know in terms of your network and where you'll meet people. So I thought that was great that he came out.
All right. How are you going to top the conference next year for the 10th annual Old Capital Conference?
I never try to top. I always try to make each one unique. So the thinking caps are on, and we'll go tour some venues. And it's just like when you're looking at a property, you're gonna go tour some properties and run the numbers and see what works the best. So, but we have a pretty good idea of, in terms of this size group, what it takes to host the conference. And so we will let you know, but definitely get on the list. If you're not on our email list, you will not hear about the conference. So get on the list if you're not on the list.
Another great conference, James. Thank you very much. And I know all the people who attended thanked you in person. I thank you. A lot of great compliments and comments made at the conference. And again, just like James says, if you're not on our email list of seeing what we're closing in terms of apartment transactions, again, we're the lender in the transaction. Again, we're not trying to sell you books or tapes or videos or anything like that. We're trying to sell you money to make your dreams come true. So we certainly do appreciate everyone coming out and enjoying the 9th annual conference this year in October of 2025. Again, any final comments, James, at all?
I talked to a lot of people who had been to our smaller events, and whether a bus tour has 40, 50 people, and I think they're almost in shock about how many people are there. To get on a bus, there's 30 or 40 people, it's pretty manageable. But then when they come to the conference, it's almost we talk to all these people throughout the week and when we're working on deals, but to just have everybody in one room, the energy that comes off of everybody, I think everyone sort of walks into the next week or 2 weeks just with a lot of renewed passion really for this business. And so every time I think hopefully everyone shows up, but every year more and more people show up. So it's a lot of fun. And hopefully if you're listening to this, you can put on your calendar for usually in October. So Wednesday and Thursday, early in October I would just block out those 2 weeks.
That's great. All right, James Eng, James the Professor Eng, thank you very much. I'm Paul Peebles. We will see you next year. See you then. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please join us at oldcapitalpodcast.com to sign up for our weekly email updates. We'll see you next week for another great interview.